Okay, now in this example, we already know the volume of the cylinder. We already know how much this can hold. What we want to know is the height. We don't know how tall it is. We're gonna go about this almost exactly the same way. So the first thing that we're gonna do is write down the formula, which is volume equals pi r squared times the height. Since we know the formula, we want to look to see what pieces of this formula are we already given. We're given the volume. We know that the volume is 176. And then here we're given an 8. So this entire length here is 8. That's not the radius, that's the diameter. We don't care about the diameter because diameter doesn't appear anywhere in this formula. But this is helpful information to us because if I know the diameter, the length of the whole thing is 8, well, the radius is just going to be half of that. So that means I do know what r is. R is going to be half of my diameter, so r is 4 because that's half of 8. And then I know my volume is 176 centimeters cubed. Okay, once we figured out what parts of the formula we already have, now we can just substitute those in and solve for our missing variable. So the volume is 176 equals pi r, and r we figured out was 4 squared times the height. So now we're in a good position because we have every single piece of this puzzle except for one. The only thing we don't know is the height. So we're going to go from here and simplify what we have. 176 equals pi times 4 squared is 16 times the height. And so now, since we want to figure out what h is, we have to get h by itself because we want it to say h equals what, right? We want it to be the only thing on that side of the equal sign. So I have to get rid of this 16 times pi. You could do this two ways. You could either multiply what is 16 times pi first and simplify that. So if we did it that way, we would say 176 is 16 times pi is going to give us, if I say 16 times pi, it's going to give me 50.265-ish times my height. And so now I've simplified that. And since this is being multiplied by the height, to do the opposite to get rid of it, I would need to divide by that 50.265 on both sides. Right? And so if you do that in your calculator, 176 divided by 50.265, you end up with an answer of approximately 3.5. So 3.5 equals, this canceled out, h. And we're in luck because this wants us to round our answer to the nearest tenth. That's why we're allowed to multiply it by pi there. So you could find your answer that way. Or, and you're done here, or if you wanted to do it slightly differently, when you got to this point right here, so when you ended up with 176 equals pi times 16 times h, you could divide by 16 on both sides to get rid of that over here. 176 divided by 16 is 11. And so then you would be left with pi times h. And then to get that h by itself, you would divide by pi. And so then you would be left with 11 over pi is equal to h, because pi divided by pi would cancel out. And you could leave it like this. And then if they wanted you to round it, you could type that in your calculator, 11 divided by pi and it would give you approximately 3.5 for your answer. So we know that since everything is in centimeters, the height is going to be 3.5 centimeters for our final answer.